All right, so we're now going to look at how to graph secant and cosecant. So you should have some room in your student journal on page 264. We're just going to use this space up in here to graph these. All right, so these are pretty easy to graph actually. We're going to start with y equals secant x. To graph y equals secant x, all we have to do is graph the cosine function I'm going to divide this up because we're going to do cosecant over here. Okay, graph the cosine function. Wherever we have 0, there will be a vertical asymptote. Just put VA. All right, so over here, I'm going to be just writing down my key points for cosine. So if I am graphing cosine, because I'm going to graph y equals cosine x in order to graph y equals secant x. So I'm comparing x and y. So if my x value is 0, pi over 2, pi, 3 pi over 2, and 2 pi. So if x is 0, what is the cosine then of 0? What's our key points, guys, for cosine? How do they go? 1, then keep going. Good. Now, like I said, wherever we get an answer of 0, that's going to be where we have a vertical asymptote. Here's the reason why. Secant is the reciprocal of cosine. So if I do the reciprocal of 0, 0 is just 0 over 1. If I do the reciprocal, I get 1 over 0, right? So right here, I'm going to have a vertical asymptote. Right here, I'm going to have a vertical asymptote. Here's how we graph this. I know that I'm going to go 0, pi over 2, pi, 3 pi over 2, 2 pi. I can go back this way a little bit, negative pi over 2, negative pi. So I know at pi over 2 I'm going to have a vertical asymptote. I know at 3 pi over 2 we're going to have a vertical asymptote. Of all these numbers that I have here, where's the other place we'd have the vertical asymptote by using this pattern? Right, negative pi over 2, I'm going to have a vertical asymptote. I'm going to put in the cosine curve. I'm going to graph it. But the only reason I'm graphing it is to help us to graph secant. So I'm going to have 1, 0, negative 1, 0, 1. I can go backwards. 1, 0, negative 1, 0, 1, 0, negative 1. These points are guidelines. See, here's the cosine curve. We will never go inside of the cosine curve. And here's why. Because the reciprocal of 1 is going to be 1. This answer right here is 1/2. What's the reciprocal of 1/2? 2. So I'd be up here. Here's another value of 1/2. The reciprocal of that would be 2. So this part right here is going to look like this. We never cross through this cosine curve. What do you think it's going to look like right here? If this one goes up kind of like a parabola, what's this one going to do? Go down like a parabola. Right here, we're going to go up. And then right here, it would be down. To check that out, let's graph it. Go to your graphing calculator. Into y1, I want you to graph just cosine x. In y2, I'm going to graph 1 divided by cosine x. That's secant. I'm going to come over here and make this bold. You guys get colors if you have a newer calculator. So here's the cosine curve. And then here is the secant curve. Can you see how it's the same thing as what we just did, right? We just use the calculator to check. We don't use it to actually do the problem. So we can see that that's the way it's going to look. All right, so now let's do cosecant. So what do you think we do for cosecant? Graph sine curve. Zeros for sine will be vertical asymptotes for cosecant. So let's make our little table of values over here for sine. 0, pi over 2, pi, 3 pi over 2, 2 pi. Do you know the key points there, Baxter? How they go?
0, 1, 0, -1, 0.
Okay, so wherever we have 0, we're going to have a vertical asymptote. So now I'm going to make my axes. So at 0, I'm going to have a vertical asymptote. Here's pi over 2. At pi, I'm going to have a vertical asymptote. At 2 pi, vertical asymptote. And at negative pi, a vertical asymptote. I'm going to go ahead and plot my points. My points go 0, 1, 0, -1, 0. Go backwards. 0, -1, 0, 1. Speed -1, 0. So here would be the sine curve. Okay? But to graph my cosecant curve, I don't pass through that sine curve at all. Here's a low point. There's my look right there. This one's going to go up like this. This one's going to go down like this. If I'm not sure I did it right, I can just come in here and I'm just going to graph the cosecant this time. So I would put in 1 divided by sine x. I'm going to look at that graph and just see if it looks like mine. See, here's where I started. Here's my axis. So see how that's right? All right. So now let's look at a couple that are more challenging. Let's flip over to our examples on page 266, and we'll finish up these last two. All right, so for number 5, Becky, what am I going to be thinking of, sine or cosine on number 5? Cosine, good. So I'm going to make my table of values for cosine. First thing I would have to do is find the period. How do we find the period for cosine? 2 pi over b, so the period's going to equal 2 pi over 2, so our period's going to be pi. So I start at 0, then I have to increase by 1/4 of pi, because I need 4 more points. So pi over 4, 2 pi over 4, 3 pi over 4, 4 pi over 4. Just adding pi over 4 on. What are our key points for cosine, Natalia?
1, 0, 1, 0.
Okay, good. But now we have this 2 in front. That 2 in front is a vertical stretch. So all of my y values are going to have to get multiplied by 2. Okay, so I'm going to make my axes. I'm going to make this 0. That's pi over 4, so this is pi over 2. Pi. Negative pi over 2. Negative pi. Whoops, negative pi. All right, so I'm going to kind of plot this cosine curve, but it's not really my graph. I'm just going to plot those points. I don't want to actually graph it. Whoops, hold on, that's wrong. So it should be 2, 0, -2, 0, 2. Then I can go back this way. This will be 0, this will be -2, this will be 0, this will be +2. So how do I know where the asymptotes are? They're going to be at wherever we have what? 0. So right here, right here. So at pi over 4, at 3 pi over 4, here, and here. And then these points guide me, and the asymptotes guide us. We don't cross the asymptotes, we wouldn't have crossed the cosine curve. Okay? All right. For cosecant. Maya, what am I going to do for cosecant? Am I going to do sine or cosine? Sine. Let's find the period first. What is it? 2 pi divided by what? 2 pi over 2 pi gives us just 1, right? So our period's going to be 1. So I start at 0. What am I going to increase by every time? 1/4. So I have 1/4 plus another fourth is 2/4 plus another fourth is 3/4 plus another fourth is 4/4. Jake, tell me the values for sine.
0, 1, 0, -1, 0.
Good. We don't have anything to multiply. We don't have a vertical stretch or shrink. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead, make my axes. I'm going to make these go by a fourth. So there's out to 1. There's out to -1. So I'm going to have an asymptote here at 0. I'll do this in red. I'm going to have an asymptote at 1/2 and an asymptote at 1. Oops. Then I'll have one here and here. And so my points are going to go 0, 1, 0, -1, 0, 1. Go backwards. Okay, so then this is going to go up like this. Down, up, down, and up. All right, not too bad, right? Okay, so go ahead and work on your homework on page 502. If you need any help, raise your hand. I'll come to you, or you can come up here to me, and I'll be happy to help you out.